This is Rob Carr, one of the co-podcasters of the Brotherhood Remnant. What you're about to hear is part one of a two-part interview with Jack Childs. Jack was a staffer at the Brotherhood Commission from the early 1960s until the Brotherhood Commission closed in 1997. Jack served in several staff positions as well as working with four Brotherhood presidents. Jack's close relationship to the Commission makes him a valuable resource in discussing its history. I do look forward to you hearing it, and we look forward to presenting it to you.
Welcome to another edition of the Brotherhood Remnant Podcast. And boy, do we have something special for you tonight. Rob Carr is with us, which he's always with us, so he's not special. But being our resident expert, we always like to have Rob Carr with us because he knows everything there is to know about Brotherhood work. You don't even want to know a lot of this stuff, but he knows it. Okay. So we have a special guest, and Rob, you just want to quickly introduce our guest before I come on here.
All right, I will do that quickly. By the way, I hope you did like my tie. I did wear a tie tonight.
Brotherhood tie. Wished I still had one.
Dress it up. I would like to introduce to you somebody that I have known for a long time, who is a great colleague and a friend, and who has Brotherhood in his DNA. And I would like to introduce to you now, and he's going to come on here immediately. His name is Jack Childs. Jack, it's good to see you. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on this podcast.
Well, it's good to see you guys. I appreciate you having me tonight.
Oh, man. By the way, before we get started, there seems to be a very young-looking face that looks familiar to you over your shoulder. I can see his head, and it looks great. Can you introduce us to him?
This is my son.
Well, he's a fine-looking man, and I love his tie, by the way.
Actually, Rob, we were talking one day, and you said when you thought about me being the resident model at the Brotherhood Commission, and it happened to remind me that once upon a time I modeled as a Royal Master Counselor. There I am, right there. Oh. And the art department made it almost life size. That's almost as tall as I am.
It's a beautiful life.
And they used them on some display. And when the Brotherhood Commission closed, that was my going away present.
Okay, you got that. Yeah. Well, I guess that's a pretty good thing. I mean, it's very nice, and you do know how to model. That's a model stance you got there. So it's really good. And but anyway, we've got some opportunity to talk with you, and we appreciate that. I don't want to give too much away, Jack, but I would say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you are the longest serving staff person at the Brotherhood Commission, and you're probably, go back, as far as we know, the farthest of any Brotherhood staffer that we've should I use the word uncovered or something, or discovered? Am I being fair with that, Jack? Am I? Is that okay?
Yeah. I worked there 36 years and a couple of weeks probably. Started on June the 5th, 1961, and I stayed until they closed us down.
Wow.
And in the history of the Brotherhood Commission, there were only of us in the 30-year club. Only four people actually worked there at least 30 years. I worked the longest at 36. Geneva Engel, you probably remember her.
I do remember her, yes.
She's an accountant. Geneva worked there more than 30 years. She passed away, by the way, last year. I had the privilege of participating in her funeral service.
Oh.
And Sharon Goodwin, I don't know if you knew her.
I did know her, yes.
Staff artist. Sharon was there 30 years. She also passed away last year. And Annie Qualls, that you perhaps do not know, but Annie worked there 30 years. And it's one of the most interesting stories of personnel to Brotherhood Commission, if we have time for interesting stories.
Oh, we do, because that's one of the things we want to talk about. I know, not to get in too far, because I don't want to feel like we're leaving Tim out of this conversation.
Rob,
but one of the things that
let me set the stage real quick for Jack, okay?
Yeah.
Number one is Jack came to work at the Southern Baptist Brotherhood Commission the year after I was born. Okay,
Thank you so much. That's
okay. And Rob Carr, just to set the record straight, never worked for the Brotherhood Commission.
well, that's true. There has been rumors that somehow I was there. I was not there. I was not there.
Familiar with what's going on here. Jack was the longest serving. I blew through there for about 6 years, from 89 to 1995. And here's the thing.Ck may have had some of the most titles at the Brotherhood Commission. Here's his titles over the years. He was the let's see if we can start this. I don't know what order, Jack, but I do know that you told us you were the circulation supervisor at one time.
That was number one.
Okay. And then you were the the marketing director.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know where the order of that is. You were the customer service manager.
Right.
Those may be inverse. I don't know. And the support service director. And then, of course, when I knew Jack, he was one of the big bosses, the vice president for support services. And what that basically meant is what Jack said on our earlier conversation is he did everything everybody else didn't want to do. Right, Jack?
Well, I didn't do it personally, but I had to have it done. Yes.
You had the people.
You were the guy that got it done.
I had some great folks that did a lot of great things that nobody ever knew about.
Yeah, and if you know what the Brotherhood Commission was, and I'll shut up here in a minute, but the Brotherhood Commission was a publishing entity in its essence. Okay, we did training and we did all those other things, but it was a publishing entity. And if you ever received any material from the Southern Baptist Brotherhood Commission, it came through Jack Child's area. Okay, he basically they backed it up to the back door and filled up the truck and sent it out to the churches. So I just wanted to kind of put this all in context, Rob, and you take it over unless Jack wants to say something.
Let me mention this about us being a publishing house. Yes, we were. And we were the largest second-class mail publisher in the city of Memphis. Yeah, and of course, second-class mail is publication mail. That's all it is. A lot of people say, I'm going to go to the post office and, I'll just send a second class. No, you don't send a second class.
No.
You send a second class only if you have publications that are duly registered, you have money on deposit, and so on. But because of our distribution of Brotherhood magazines, we were the largest second class publisher in the city. As the Sunday School Board at one time was probably the largest second class publisher, I think, in the United States. But we were here in Memphis, and we had a good relationship with the post office. That was my job also, to make sure things got done with the post office. All of the records got filed, and it was an interesting process.
Now, Jack, you didn't. I know Lifeway had its own zip code or Sunday School Board. The Brotherhood Commission didn't have its own.
No,
zip code.
we did not. No, we were 38104, but that was just a section of the city.
Okay, well, Jack also has some interesting a background too, because among his many responsibilities, Jack, is it safe to say, without maybe a few exceptions, in the more modern time, you just about visited every Baptist bookstore in the convention in just about every state. Is that a fair estimate to say?
At that time, I did visit every one of them. Now, I think they added some more now. They became Lifeway, and I don't know. They probably closed a lot of them.
They have.
Yeah. But I visited all of them at one time. A bunch of great folks out there, and actually during that time, I felt like I worked more with the Baptist Sunday School Board than I did the Brotherhood Commission sometimes. I did all the cataloging of all of our materials. We set prices and worked out the contracts with the Sunday School Board. Spent a lot of time with those guys. We made some really, really good friends up at Sunday School Board, which is now Lifeway, of course.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we tend to use terms that kind of cross over between that. But I would say, Jack, and again, I want to give you a chance to talk about your first, being considered about your position and everything, and then we want to get into your paper that you wrote. But I was going to ask you, and this is a part, because I came into the Brotherhood life in 1982, although I was an RA counselor in 1970. I was an RA all the way back to 1960 when you had to be 9 years old to be an RAs. So I knew about Ambassador Life at that time. I knew about all of those publications, most of them. But I would say that in my estimation, and maybe you can enlighten us a little bit, you were instrumental in really growing the customer service base of the Brotherhood Commission. I can only imagine when you came, what was there, one person, two people maybe that handle all the orders and everything, or I don't want to guess because I was too little at that time to know.
Are you talking about you were too little or I was too old?
No. Well, if Tim wasn't born yet, I was going on 10 years old when you came. So, I had an inkling of things, but not as much as I would have liked to have.
Actually, when I went there, the magazines for the Royal Ambassadors were mailed out of Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
Yeah, the company that printed them also mailed them. Now we had the Brotherhood Journal, it was called at that time. It was a small digest size magazine. It was a terrific little magazine, by the way. And it was mailed out of the building over on 1548 Poplar here in Memphis. But other magazines were mailed in Nashville. And one of my jobs, I didn't know I was going to inherit this job when they hired me, but was to move that process from Nashville to Memphis. It was a major undertaking to take all those files and move them down here. And also, we didn't have any people to do that kind of work. We had to hire additional people to do the physical wrapping of the publications, put them in the mail. Customer services people. We had customer services people, but the main thing we had was complaints. And the reason we had so many complaints is because the things went out of Nashville, out of I think it was Curley Printing Company handling it in those days. But we were handling magazines, the Brotherhood Journal out of Memphis, and we were trying to sell them all under the banner of the Brotherhood Commission, which was in Memphis, and orders going to Nashville and orders coming to Memphis. It was a big mix up, and we had a lot of complaints.
Well,
and,
I was going to
let me tell you, a man named Dick Sherrick hired me.
Oh, okay.
And Dick started me at the very bottom of doing subscription problems. And I realized later the reason he did that was so that as I had an opportunity to move up through the organization, I would literally know and understand every problem that we had and how it came about and how we would solve it. And my first year or two, I guess that's mainly what I did. I answered complaints. I've got the typewriter. I wish I'd have brought it in here and put it on the table. I've got sitting in my den right next door the typewriter that I started using at the Brotherhood Commission.
That's classic.
Every one of those complaint letters had to be answered, and I answered it typing on my own typewriter, put it in the envelope, and mailed it. I didn't have a secretary.
Well, Jack, I'm gonna ask you to jump a little bit ahead. I know we're gonna get to some other things, but you've segued this beautifully. You have to tell the story of you and Forrest Sawyer regarding the complaints, because I think it's priceless, Tim. I don't know if you've heard this, but for our podcast members, this may appear to be boring, but I'm going to tell you something. You have to work with the personalities, and Jack knew how. You got to tell them who Forrest is. Yeah,
tell them who Forrest Sawyer is.
Forrest Sawyer, and the way I got to know him is when I attended Southern Seminary. I was interested in Brotherhood work, so I went to the Kentucky Baptist Convention to avail myself as an intern with the Brotherhood office, and I met Forrest Sawyer, who was from Illinois, as I was, and then I got to work with Calvin Fields and RAs. Well, I got to know Forrest and Calvin very well, but Forrest was a fascinating personality because he would tell you what you needed to know, and you better not change his mind or question his thinking. And so I don't know if that helps, Jack, but I could see Forrest in these Brotherhood meetings where he would, if he got up and started to speak, everybody probably just got real quiet. But tell us what happened with you between you and Forrest and a complaint he had regarding some products.
Yeah, I don't remember what the specific complaint was. I dealt with too many complaints to remember specifically, but we messed up something for Forrest's office there at the Brotherhood Department in Kentucky, and it was enough of a complaint that he didn't have somebody else check on it. Forrest checked on it personally, and he wanted to talk to the man in charge. Well, he didn't know that I was a young pipsqueak. I hadn't been there but a few years, wasn't dry behind the ears, and he wanted to speak to that person. So they gave the call to me. And so Forrest proceeded to straighten me out, which he did, by the way. and I did the best I could to straighten out the problem, and he liked what I did for him. From that day on, if Forrest ever had a problem, wanted to place an order, if he wanted to order 2 copies of something, he called me. He did not go through customer services. He wanted to speak to me, and he had a standard beginning when he called me. And this is the honest truth. When I would answer the phone, and we were taught to say, Jack Childs, whatever your name was, I would answer the phone, Jack Childs. The next thing I heard was, "You got a pencil?"
That's Forrest. Classic.
I learned after the first time that was Forrest Sawyer, so I got my pencil.
Precious.
And I said, "Forrest, I'm ready." I said, "What you got?" And he would proceed to either order something or have a complaint, tell me what was wrong and what I needed to do. But the standard entree into the conversation was, "You got a pencil?"
Jack, I'll say this, Tim,
that was Forrest. Yeah.
Jack, this position was made for you, because I really felt like, and I saw how you worked. I watched you. I watched you handle many different things. But to me, you always had, we'll look into it, we'll check it out. I know there had to have been some times when you gritted your teeth going, what in the world are we doing? And again, I don't want to get too far ahead, Tim, and interrupt me, but the one thing that I know, Jack, I haven't talked to you about this, but Full Metal Jacket, I think is what it was called, or Full Armor, excuse me. That was a movie. I didn't mean to get into that. Not the movie. It has nothing to do. Edit this out. Full Armor. Full Armor was a bust. I'm sorry for those that had that. Jack, can I open you up a little bit and ask you, how did you feel about that magazine? One issue. That's always how I get over it. One issue. That's all that was printed.
Yeah, Jim Burton pushed that through.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't want to name names, but Jack, I mean, did you ever have those feelings like you did with Full Armor?
It was a bust. Well, what was
We had a lot of great ideas, didn't we, Jack?
Right after at the Iraqi War, I believe.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Of course, that whole thing blew up on the world scene very suddenly, and somebody, will go nameless, at the Brotherhood Commission had an idea that these guys are going to war over there, and we need to do something for them. And then somebody had the idea, "Oh yeah, that's right. What can we do? Let's have a magazine for them, for the guys in the war who fight the battles for our country. We need a magazine for them. What are we going to call it?" Somebody came up. What was it, Rob?
What, Full Armor? Yeah,
Full Armor.
Yeah, it was
Full Armor.
It was Full Armor, and I think the first issue we came out with was right before Southern Baptist Convention time. We took a lot of them up there, and we handed those things out to everybody. Came up and down the halls in the convention center there, and in the display center, and we sent out order blanks all. And now I will have to say that I was one who quietly thought this was a bust. But that we had so much excitement about it. I mean, up and down the organization. And one thing about it, we turned on a dime. Man, we decided to do that thing. And I mean, within months, it was in the hands of the public. Yeah, it was.
You all
it,
did it. Yeah, because I remember
yeah,
you had it ready for the state leadership meeting.
it showed how quickly we could turn around
Yeah,
and get
it
it
has
done.
some great content in
But
it.
the
Yeah.
problem was, as good as it was, nobody wanted it.
Yeah, well, it took something that we couldn't control. It instructed the churches
Yeah.
to make it available to military personnel and to distribute it. And I have found that that's not always a good recipe.
Well,
You know?
another thing, Tim, is both of y'all will know, when it comes to the marketing world,
Yes.
the job is to find what it is that people need and then
Yeah.
provide it for them. We tended to make products that we thought they needed and convince them that you ought to have this thing,
Yes.
And sometimes we had some red herrings in the line, that didn't go over too well because we didn't do enough research on it.
Right.
It was a good idea that somebody had, and we produced a good idea, but nobody else, the people with the money to buy it didn't think it was a good idea. That happened.
One other thing, Jack, I was going to mention to you, but this was on a good note under Dr. Smith and Tim. I'm not sure you were there yet, but briefly, just I can only imagine 1987. You had to change the whole Brotherhood scenario, and we had come in and decided that we needed separate magazines for Lad and Crusaders. We needed separate advancement books. We needed separate leadership books, study guides, Baptist men, Baptist young men, high school. Jack, I'm surprised you didn't lose all your hair in that transition from trying to get the old stuff out of the bookstores and the new stuff in there.
He had a full head of hair when that all started.
Yeah. Well, of course, everybody in the organization, it didn't matter whether you were an editor or, field representative of the program, or in our case, customer services and marketing. Everybody had something to do. Now, it so happened that my particular role in that was to get the bookstores stocked up with the new product and let them know what took place, what was going out, and what the new one was. And so I set up a system where I set up individual meetings at every bookstore in the Southern Baptist Convention. I set up a meeting and bought one of these big salesman's cases. They're big things. Yeah. And so I made up a kit of every one of those new products and put them in my bag. And then we shipped some of it ahead to the bookstores, all the new products, a sample of all of them. And then with some of them, I would, if I was in a car, I would take the samples with me. Of course, when I was flying from city to city, I couldn't do that. But we would get those sets of samples. Oh yeah, I missed one thing. I would find out how many staff members they had in the bookstore. Most of them didn't have very many. Right. And may say half a dozen, 10. Now the big stores, that's a different matter. But if you were working with 6 or dozen, we would make that many sets of the materials, and I would have them there, and I would arrange a meeting in the morning at each bookstore, and I would go in, and we would have all the old stuff there and say, okay, here's what we got, and we'd go through it. This replaces this replaces this, and see what questions they might have. And I did that in, I don't know how many stores there were then, about 50, I guess.
Yeah.
And
and not only did you have to do that for the bookstore, you had to provide those same materials.
Yeah, we did it with you guys.
Yeah, I was going to say we had maybe six training sites. One of them was at Cedarmore in 1987 in Kentucky, and you, I mean, we had to bring everybody out to learn, and of course, you had to provide the material even for the state leadership meeting. Jack, I know that Full Armor was a huge, fast turnover, but I have never seen how well you guys worked day and night, night and day to get all of that. This is not just a small magazine. This was 20, 30 products, I think. I mean, I may be guessing at the number of products that you had to switch over, from one to the other.
Yeah, I don't know how many it was, but it's probably a lot more than 20 or 30.
Okay.
And, yeah. Yeah,
But
yeah, we changed a lot of them, but we had a lot of good folks
okay.
at the place. I mean, I did the field work, but we had a good group of customer service personnel and down in the shipping room, and they're the ones that actually got
Well,
the job done. One thing
sure.
about working at the Brotherhood Commission and working with different leadership and
Yes. Yes.
yeah, I know we talked a little bit about this the other day. There were 6 presidents of the Brotherhood Commission in their history. They didn't call him president during that whole time. J.T. Henderson was the very first one. Uh, Even as old as I am, Tim, I did not know him. But I knew all the rest of them. There were 5 others.
It's
One
amazing.
was Lawson Cook, and when I was 17 years old, and I wasn't a member of the Brotherhood because you had to be a man to be in the Brotherhood.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But a lot of us kids, 17, our dads were in there, and we used to like to go to those Brotherhood meetings and shoot the bull with those old guys, you know. And it was fun. And Lawson Cook, who was the president of the Brotherhood Commission at that time, he was called the executive secretary.
Right.
He spoke at one of the meetings, and so I had the privilege of meeting him, and then I had other run-ins with him throughout his life. But then the other 4 I actually worked for them. George Schroeder was there when I went to work. George was a tight-fisted Republican businessman, and I mean, he held that money in a tight fist. And we could have reserves, but Dr. Schroeder wouldn't spend reserves. We might need them someday. And his staff could be starving to death, but we might need this money for something else. He was a good man, and he was really instrumental in really taking the Brotherhood Commission off and giving it more stature in the Southern Baptist Convention.
Jack, if I could jump in real quick, I remember because I have an audio recording of him giving a report to the SBC somewhere in the late 50s, early 60s. Tim, he even talked about how much postage they spent. He knew every little piece that went out. I guess he looked at the ledgers, Jack, and watched those things carefully. But he could tell you how much postage they spent. So
he was tight with the money, but he got the thing off the ground, and he had that building, that beautiful building.
Yes,
that was built under his lead, and of course, some of the papers that you read talk about, he retired, I believe in 1971. I'm not sure.
Right. It was 71. Yeah. Yes.
But the reason he retired, he had cancer.
Right.
And he was in the hospital, and he was dying actually, and he knew that he didn't have much time left, and he retired, stepped aside before he actually passed away. And then Glendon McCullough followed him. He was head of personnel at the Home Mission Board at the time. He was the first ordained leader of the Brotherhood Commission. Henderson and Cook and Schroeder were all businessmen. And Glendon was a gregarious soul. I don't know if you knew him.
I knew him. Yes.
He was out front, and he was going to put us on the map. He told us he didn't care what it took to spend whatever we had to spend. We were going to spend it, and people were going to know about the Brotherhood Commission. And he did. He got them to know about us, and so much so that at one time we had to reduce staff by about 25%. To keep from going under. But he did some really interesting things to get us known out front, and some worthwhile projects that he did. He was a personal friend of Jimmy Carter, by the way.
Yes.
And Glendon's first wife had passed away, and he married a missionary lady, and they got married in the governor's mansion down in Georgia. And then Glendon Carter was a trustee of the Brotherhood Commission.
I was going to ask. Yeah, exactly.
At one time. Yeah.
And you said you met him. Is that correct? Did you meet him briefly?
Yeah, he invited the Brotherhood Commission trustees to have one of their annual meetings in Washington, D.C. and visit the White House. and he had a photo op in. And I think the trustees who went each got to have their picture made with him in the Oval Office. I'm not sure that I didn't get my picture made with him, but the trustees did go in. But all of the staff who went there and our families, a lot of us took our families with us. He and Rosalind had a open house meeting with us in the Rose Garden, and but the most interesting thing I had with him was we had a meeting and Glendon had invited him to speak. He was still governor of Georgia at this time, and when it came time for him to go back to the airport, Glendon wanted one of our staff to ride with him, and I was the only one standing around at the time, and everybody else had some kind of assignment. There I was, and he said, Jack said ride back with Governor Carter to the airport and escort him back. So there were four of us in the car. There was a police officer from the Memphis Police Department, and he was the driver of the car. Carter's bodyguard was there, and Carter and I were in the back seat. And people asked me what we talked about. I said, what do you think we talked about? Let's see, what was he?
Well, he was a peanut farmer for one thing.
Well, he was a peanut farmer, but you know, he was a naval
nuclear.
officer.
He was a naval officer.
He was a nuclear physicist.
That's right. That's right.
And as I said, well, you know, there were a lot of things we could talk about. He was a nuclear physicist. He was a commander in the Navy. And I said, so what do you think we talked about? And this is the truth. This is the truth. We talked about baseball. He loved baseball, so did I. He and Hank Aaron were good friends. I escorted him back to the airport. And on the way back to the airport, they had got a radio message from the airport that it was about time for the plane to take off. How far were they away? And I can remember distinctly Carter said, let me tell you one thing, Delta Airlines better not go off and leave the government of Georgia.